Good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Palais, and this is the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. I'm a member of the congregation and will be leading part of the service today. We are a congregation that welcomes all, black and white, gay and straight, liberals, conservatives, atheists, theists, mystics, and rationalists. All can find a home here because UU Principles and Culture supports and celebrates the diversity of personal identities and a diversity of ideas. This morning, our service will be about what is referred to as the beloved community. You will be hearing more of that during the sermon. So I want to say just a few things about welcome, about diversity, and about our UU community. In my opening words, I welcome all who are in attendance at each service. I now want to widen that. I invite guests to come multiple times to get to know us and to consider becoming part of this community, to become members. In my opening statement, I made particular reference to those who have cultural, racial, or gender identities that lead them to have experiences that differ to some degree from those in the mainstream. I did so because we at UUFOP are interested in those experiences, because we at UUFOP embrace diversity. The way we do things here, the way we structure our services, the types of services we have, our music and programs reflect the interests and experiences of our current members. But I and many members I know are always interested in trying new ways of doing things that are brought to us from the lives and experiences of new members. In my welcome, I said we celebrate a diversity of ideas. I love the company of people whose ideas are similar to mine, but equally, I love the company of people whose ideas are largely different from my own. So we welcome the membership of people who think a lot like our current members and those who enrich our experience here by bringing differing ideas. Finally, I see additional dimensions of diversity, a diversity of personalities, a diversity of interests, a diversity of lifestyles. You may be in the mainstream in every external way, but I and many members I know recognize that everyone is unique, everyone is interesting, every new member adds to our diversity. But do we really welcome everyone? Do we really accept all ideas? My response is this: our 7 principles are our foundation, principles that we write on the back of every order of service. So if you feel comfortable with those principles, then you can find a home here. I have said a lot about how we recognize and celebrate diversity here at UUFP, how diversity enriches our lives. When I woke up this morning, I decided there was something else I should mention. I think it is also important to recognize and celebrate our commonality, because beneath the surface of our diverse identities and personalities, our differing opinions and philosophies, which often come and go. And despite our differing personal experiences, we all share a common experience that is often more powerful and more compelling than any differences I mentioned above. The experience of simply being human in this world. Now we're ready for announcements. If you have an announcement, please come up and give your name.
I'm Linda. I have 2 announcements. The first of which is today is the first day for our new full-time nursery attendant, David. She is marvelous. She has met with the approval of what I term the moms. I would ask that for any of you who have friends who are interested in learning more about being a UU, but have small children, let them be comforted to know that we have a very qualified nursery attendant. I notice we now call it the Rainbow Room. So yay for that. And she's here, so after services, please go introduce yourself. The second is I will be placing another order for giant cards. And for those of you who may not know how giant cards work and are a bit of a fundraiser for us, for every $1 that is spent, we basically get 5% of the dollar spent. So rather than you spending $100 at Giant, you spend $100 to us. We then say we want a $100 gift card, but we are only charged $95. So we make $5 off of that. So if you shop at Giant, and again, it's good for gas, it's good for wine and beer, it's good for groceries, anything you can buy at Giant, consider coming to me. I'll place orders once a month, and you can use the Giant card to help you have paid. So thank you.
Going to piggyback off Linda's announcement. Today was also the first day of our new choir director. So we were here working on it, and everybody's welcome to come and sing 9:30, well, before 9:30 on Sunday mornings. What's her name? Anna Swanson.
Any more announcements? Now we come to lighting the chalice. To accompany lighting the chalice, I will read a passage from Ujensi Nagajijimana, which was chosen by our guest minister, Reverend Kim. When strangers meet, endless possibilities emerge. New experiences, new ways of understanding, and new ways of taking action. When strangers meet, each pays special attention to the other. Each is called to serve something larger than the self. Today, this morning, let's light the chalice for openness, for willingness to grow, for rich curiosity, and for common purpose. I'll now introduce our guest minister. Most of you know our guest minister, Reverend Kim Wilson, because we've had the good fortune of having her as our guest minister many times in the past. For those who may be watching on YouTube and don't know her, I will say just a few things about her background. Reverend Kim graduated with a Master's of Divinity from Moravian Theological Seminary in 2000, was ordained in 2001, and has served 3 fellowships as a minister. She is currently a half-time minister at the UUs of Central Delaware in Dover. In addition to serving congregations, she has served Unitarian Universalism at the regional and national level. For example, from 2019 to 2021, Reverend Kim chaired the National UU Ministers Association Guidelines Ethics Committee. She has also served the local Priestley Kinsbury chapter of the UU Ministers Association as Secretary and President. Kim, it is a pleasure to have you back today.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, it's good to be back. Good to see everybody. Our opening words come to us from A. Powell Davies, a prominent UU minister from our last century, and the words have been slightly adapted. And he says, "None of our private worlds is big enough for us to live a wholesome life in. We need the wider world of joy and wonder, of purpose and venture, of toil and tears. What are we, any of us, but strangers and sojourners, forlornly wandering through the nighttime until we draw together and find the meaning of our lives in one another, dissolving our fears in each other's courage, making music together, and lighting torches to guide us through the night. We belong together. Love is what we need, to love and to be loved. Let our hearts be open, and what we would receive from others, let us give. For what is given still remains to bless the giver when the gift is love. Come, let us worship together." And I hope that you have teal hymnals there. I invite you to open your teal hymnals to number 1017, Building a New Way. Please rise as you are able. So, I believe we have a story for all ages this morning. So invite the children up, And you can get yourself a mat.
Okay, hi. So this is called The Everything Seed, A Story of Beginnings by Carol Martinagno. And Carol's actually a UU minister, which I learned about yesterday. I didn't know that. All right. Have you ever watched a seed grow? Have you ever noticed how it begins so small, so still, so quiet, like a gift waiting, wanting to be opened? And how slowly it wakes up, begins to unfold, growing into something larger. And larger, and larger. Then you know that whatever comes from a seed usually ends up looking very little like the seed it came from, which is also true of the very first seed. Once long ago, way back before the beginning, so long ago, there was no such thing as time because there was no one there to count it. Everywhere was a huge, deep, mysterious place, like something waiting to happen. There were no stars, no sun, no moon. There was no place like Earth, not a drop of water or a single tree or rock or flower, and no living beings anywhere. But in the deep waiting space was hidden the tiniest point of something no bigger than a seed. It was not a flower seed. It was not an oak tree seed. It was not a seed of corn, although all of those things were included in that seed. You might call it an everything seed, because that is what it became. No one knows where the first seed came from, or how it was planted, or how it knew, in the way that only seeds seem to know, how long to wait for just the right moment to sprout and grow. But all at once, this tiny seed, cradled and nourished in the rich soil of space, woke up, broke open, and began to unfold, unfolding, and blossoming forth. Into an enormous, blazing ball of light. Like a great-grandmother's son. And the universe was born. Out fluttered the galaxies like a storm of snowflakes swirling and gathering into the brightest, most blindingly beautiful cloud of stars. And out of those star clouds whirled our own star, the one we call the sun, and our Earth, and our moon, and all the round spinning planets we have learned how to name. And this is the secret of that tiny seed. You and I were there in the very beginning. Just as the idea for each leaf on the big oak tree lies hidden inside the acorn, we were there with all the stars and planets, and the rocks and oceans, plants and animals and people. Everything that is now, ever was, or ever will be, was inside that first tiny seed. So whenever you hold a seed in your hand and wonder what it could become, imagine how you and all that is here once came from the tiniest speck of the everything seed, before it sprouted and grew long, long ago in the way back beginning of time. Now, if this were an ordinary story, it would end right here. But this story of the universe keeps unfolding. What once began in a blazing blossom of light continues every day. New stars sprout open in the deep soil of space. New plants and animals appear on Earth. Seeds of many kinds are scattered everywhere. And help us to remember and new people are born every day with the spark of that first light still alive and burning deep inside, waiting. Like the everything seed, to shine in ways that are yet to be known. The end.
We'll sing the children out with Go Now in Peace. Children head off to their classes, we're going to enter into a time of meditation. And we'll begin by singing Spirit of Life. We'll remain seated, and then we'll enter into about a minute of silent meditation, followed by a spoken meditation, and then a musical meditation. Spirit of Life draws us together in a web of holy relationships. Remind us that we are not alone in our times of grief and pain. Comfort us with your spirit, manifest in human hands and voices. Remind us that we're not alone in joy and wonder. Inspire us to honor and extend the beauty we find in this world. Divine music of the universe, let our hearts beat in diverse and harmonious rhythms, cooperating in an everlasting dance of love. May we move with the rhythms of peace, with the rhythms of compassion, with the rhythms of justice. Source of all, open our hearts to all of our neighbors. Open our souls to a renewal of faith. Open our hands to join together as day by day With all we need along the way, we build the beloved community. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
Thank you, Carly.
Thank you.
Our fellowship has existed for 55 years because over those years, our members and friends have generously contributed to our community the considerable knowledge and labor needed to build and maintain our physical structure, the vision and imagination and creativity to create our programs, the compassion and love to make us feel at home, and the hospitality to welcome new people into our community. That is a lot. But at this time in our service, we ask for one more ingredient that is necessary to keep this good thing going: additional financial support. I thank everyone for their contribution.
This reading that I'm going to share with you this morning was written by Victoria Safford, one of our UU ministers. The beloved community is not a goal or destination, and it is not any kind of idealistic Christian utopian dream, but instead a way of being, spiritually, politically, economically, emotionally, intellectually. Beloved community is an attitude, an orientation of the heart. It's a disciplined understanding of your own relationship to other people, to everyone else on the planet, and to every living thing. If you are religious, this is a religious discipline, and it goes by many names. You are seeking spiritual wholeness, spiritual balance. It is a spiritual discipline. If you are an ethical humanist, it is a deliberate moral stance. It is a daily practice, a spiritual politics that requires inclusivity, nonviolence, and a hard discipline of radical hospitality. It requires love, agape. And let's join in singing our next hymn, number 354, Laugh and Cry. beautiful song with a beautiful message. And it makes me all the sadder to tell you the story that I'm going to begin my talk with this morning. 2 winters ago, there was a story in the news. It still stays with me. It was about 3 murders in a farming community, not far from where I live, just north of Nazareth. A couple, James and Lisa Goyes and their neighbor and Jeffrey Spade, had an argument about snow removal. They had previously been involved in a string of disputes. After a big snowstorm, the Goyes shoveled out their parking spots, pushed the snow across the street, and threw it on Spade's property. Spade asked them to remove the snow. They refused. An argument ensued. James Goy cocked his fist. Spade went into his house, returned with a pistol. He then shot and killed James and Lisa, went back into his house, realized he had just ruined his life, and he shot himself in the head. 3 people died because of an argument about snow. And I just feel especially sad. I've been thinking a lot about the idea of the beloved community that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Spoke so much about, and how if an understanding of beloved community became the basis for all our relationships, we wouldn't have neighbors killing neighbors over parking spaces in snow. Often in our Unitarian Universalist circles, when we speak of the beloved community, we're speaking of ourselves, of our religious communities. And in the act of gathering here today, by being a member or a friend of the Unitarian Universalists Fellowship of Pottstown, sorry, let me try that again. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. Here, you have created a particular kind of community. I have too many UUFPs in my life, that's what it is. Anyway, this is a community of faith. Here in this community, we come hoping to connect with like-minded people, hoping for acceptance, seeking greater understanding. We want to be part of something larger than ourselves. As we hold up the idea of unity, we also strive to break down the walls that separate us from others. As my colleague Julianne Silverman Bunn says, our job as individuals and as members of a community of faith is to create here a safe place for people together, to be nurtured and loved, the quirky and the earthy, the grounded and the groundless. We should all be able to check our armor at the door when we come to church, to our sanctuary from the world as it is, and enter this place where we try to create a microcosm of the world as it ought to be. Here, we can put our weapons of self-defense away or even leave them at home. At the King Center in Atlanta, the staff explained to visitors that beloved community is a term that was first coined in the early 20th century by philosopher and theologian Josiah Royce. Royce founded the Fellowship of Reconciliation, of which King was a member. It was King who popularized the term and invested it with deeper meaning. Dr. King's beloved community is a global vision. In this vision, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. All racism, discrimination, and oppression will be replaced by a spirit of kinship. In the beloved community, love and trust will triumph over fear and hatred. Peace and justice will prevail over war and violence. In the beloved community, there will be conflict. That is an inevitable part of human experience. But King believed that conflicts from the interpersonal to the international could be resolved without violence. All conflict can end with reconciliation and cooperation in a spirit of friendship and goodwill, he said. Let's just pause for a moment to take in these words, these ideas. I invite you to place your hand or your hands over your heart. And what does it feel like to imagine living in such a world where love guides everyone's interactions, where we feel safe, where strangers reach out to us with kindness and caring? And notice how this vision makes you feel. If the idea of the global beloved community sounds far-fetched to you, you're not alone. As we look at our world today, I think it is far-fetched, but that doesn't mean we should dismiss it because it seems unattainable. Moral values and attitudes can shift over time. Over the long term, a shift toward a more loving and less violent world is entirely possible. And maybe, as UU Minister Victoria Safford says, it's not an actual goal or destination or a utopian dream. If we think of the beloved community instead as a way of being for individuals and communities, we become part of that shift. The beloved community can absolutely be something we embrace and practice, something that comes from deep within us, from that place that we were just in touch with, from our hearts. The beloved community can become an orientation of the heart. In a country that continues to experience more and more violence, greater and greater polarization, I believe that beloved community as a way of being is something that we all need to learn to practice more than ever. And what better place to learn how to be part of a beloved community than right here? This is where we can create a safe place for people to be nurtured and loved. Here is where we create a microcosm of the world as we believe it ought to be. Here is our training ground for the world, the larger world. What do we need then to practice the beloved community in our Unitarian Universalist communities? The first ingredient is love. One of the Greek words for love is agape. Agape was at the core of Dr. King's beloved community. Agape is a particular kind of love. He described it as goodwill for all. Agape, he said, is the love of God operating in the human heart. He added, agape does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people. It begins by loving others for their sakes and makes no distinction between a friend and an enemy. It is directed toward both. Agape is love seeking to preserve and create community. Dr. King believed that the beloved community also requires a commitment to nonviolence. He was an ardent follower of Mahatma Gandhi, who made a practice of befriending his enemies and his adversaries. In his 1959 Sermon on Gandhi, Dr. King described the effects of choosing nonviolence over violence. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of beloved community, so that when the battle's over, a new relationship comes into being between the oppressed and the oppressor. In the same sermon, he contrasted the results of violent versus nonviolent resistance to oppression. The way of violence leads to bitterness in the survivors and brutality in the destroyers. But the way of nonviolence leads to redemption and the creation of beloved community. So agape and nonviolence are two important aspects of the practice of the beloved community. We also need to practice seeking out encounters with people we don't know. The Quaker teacher and writer Parker Palmer has spoken frequently about the need for the stranger in our lives, and he advocates for the practice of what he calls radical hospitality. He says it's normal and natural to tend to operate in smaller, more tightly knit communities such as our families and our church communities. And our tendency to be somewhat suspicious of strangers may even be an evolutionary characteristic. He says, "It is true that we are all in this together. It is equally true that we spend most of our lives in tribes or lifestyle enclaves, and that thinking of the world in terms of us and them is one of the many limitations of the human mind. The good news is that us and them does not need to mean us versus them. Instead, it can remind us of the ancient tradition of hospitality to the stranger and give us a chance to translate it into 21st century terms. Hospitality, rightly understood, is premised on the notion that the stranger has much to teach us. It actively invites otherness into our lives to make them more expansive, including forms of otherness that seem utterly alien to our way of life. Of course, we will not practice deep hospitality if we do not embrace the creative possibilities inherent in our differences. Agape, nonviolence, and hospitality to the stranger. We practice approaching our interactions with others with a spirit of love and compassion, an intention to do no harm, and an attitude of welcome. We are practicing 3 foundational elements of the practice of beloved community. In this time of polarization, this can sound like a huge challenge. We can't change everyone around us. In fact, we probably can't really change anyone, but we can change our own attitudes and our way of being in the world. If we look at our UU principles, we can see that they are very much in keeping with the idea of beloved community. In thinking about how you've learned to be together here at UUFP, in this community of faith, I invite you to pause for a moment and reflect. What are some of the other qualities or things that you've practiced or observed here as part of a beloved community way of being? How do you help UUFP to be a microcosm of the world we wish to create? May we someday create a larger world in which the words senseless and killing will never be found together, where neighbors practice neighborliness, person to person and nation to nation, and where snow is just snow and not a prelude to violence. In the meantime, what are we but strangers and sojourners wandering through the nighttime until we draw together and find the meaning of our lives in one another? Dissolving our fears in each other's courage, making music together and lighting torches to guide each other through the night. This is what it means to live the beloved community. Through our words and acts of love and compassion, we have the power to bring comfort and joy to others, to make the world a little bit better for our having been present. Really, what does it cost us to be kind? May we learn not to discriminate between worthy and unworthy people. May we someday be able to look beyond distinctions between friends and enemies. As Dr. King implored us, may we love others for their sakes, as fellow human beings, as a human embodiment of the spirit of love. And let's remember, the arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. The practice of a beloved community is not easy, but we can do it. We're part of a long chain of the progress of humanity. And in this short time here on Earth, it is up to us to do our part, to be the change we wish to see in the world. May we continue the work of creating beloved community begun by those who came before us And may we inspire the work of those who come after us. May it be so. Let's turn again to our teal hymnals, to hymn number 1008, Heart in a Holy Peace. I invite you to turn into your order of service to our unison closing words. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Love all needs.
Thank you, Kim, for a very nice presentation. We now come to extinguishing the chalice. We end our service today by extinguishing the chalice. While the physical light goes out, may the light of this service stay with us. Now I invite you back to those concerns.